It is our pleasure to be joined by the host of the Down to Dunk podcast. He also hosts like 10 other podcasts for The Athletic at this point. This guy is everywhere. Andrew Schlecht is in the house off a late night at the Paycom Center. What's up, man?
Man, just living the dream. Just getting to watch basketball, talk about basketball all the time. Just feel outrageously blessed this morning.
That's awesome. Now, I got to start with the most important question. Did Aaron Wiggins save basketball last night?
Oh my gosh, he saved the Thunder last night. He was so good. He was so good off the bench. And it left me asking this question. What else has he got to do? What else does Aaron Wiggins have to do to become like the regular seventh guy on this team? Because he didn't play this many minutes at all in the first round. He played 23 minutes or more only 9 times out of 82 in the regular season. And like you guys watch, like how many times have you watched? Like, man, Aaron Wiggins does not have it tonight. Have you ever said that phrase?
No.
The guy is good, and like good as in like he's a good bench player and a guy that can slide in and play like closing minutes if you need him to. It's not like he's going to be like some all-star or something, but he's a really solid role player.
Well, it was quite the performance. I think a lot of people may be getting really excited about it. Can you bring us back to earth a little bit? Like, did you see something in there? Obviously, shot making and stuff like that for Dallas is going to be incredible at times, but rotation wise, like I guess what are the answers that Dallas is going to have to last night's performance?
Well, I think one, I can point to the fact that Jason Kidd as a coach has never won a game one in the playoffs. It's never happened. So this kind of continues the tradition with Jason Kidd not being able to pull out a game one. So there's that. They looked just as bad, if not worse, against the Clippers in round one and game one, and then came back and played really well in game two. Now, they had Maxi Kleba in that series, and he is outrageously important to them. And I thought he was going to be if they made it through to round two, I thought he was going to be really important against the Thunder, in particular because he is their only stretch big, and he's a guy that can also switch a little bit, which you really can't do with Gafford or Lively. Without him, they couldn't throw other looks. They PJ Washington got in foul trouble really quick last night, and they couldn't play him at the five. I think they might try that, but I don't think that's a good option. I don't think the Mavs think that's a good option. Um, I think if you're a Thunder fan, I think you have every right to feel good. Luka Doncic did not look right. He took 2 shots at the rim last night. He was not trying to get in the paint. The Thunder not only have Lou fighting over every single screen, but they pack the paint. They cut off his lanes to the hoop, and he doesn't have the burst or even like the strength to go to the hoop over and over again like he typically does. And like that's been the Mavs offense all season. It's Luka getting into the paint, spraying out to the corners, spraying out to Kyrie, and he just doesn't have it. He settled for a lot of threes last night. He was 1 of 8 from three. Now, maybe he goes 7 of 8 from three in game two. To me, it's all the only real thing that the Mavs have left is like shot variance. Like they shot 34% from three last night. Could they shoot 44 on Thursday and the Thunder shoot 34? Well, that could be the thing. And that could happen. You have Kyrie Irving, who is still lightning quick, smooth as almost any player in the league. You could get PJ Washington a little bit more involved if he doesn't get in foul trouble. I think Derek Jones can hit a few threes. Tim Hardaway Jr. does not look right. He came over to the scorers table so many times last night trying to stretch out his leg, and he just doesn't look like he's ready to go. He played 17 minutes, was almost a complete non-factor. They need another scoring punch, or they need a somebody to kind of change up what they do, and they don't really have that with the injuries that they have going on right now.
I'm with you. I don't think Luca looks close to 100%. And some of those threes you're talking about, they're really hard shots, even for him. I mean, he's
Yeah.
one of the best players in the world, but they're just really difficult shots. So Kyrie, in my mind, kind of becomes the main concern. What did you think of the way that the Thunder defended Kyrie? What'd you see from J-Dub and from Cason Wallace when he was on the floor?
I thought Kaysen was the best defender on him. I think he can match his quickness, at least defensively, and can stick with him. He's got great hands. He's got such quick hands that he can bother Kyrie a little bit. I think J-Dub in spots was good with just his size, but once he's screened, Kyrie can just jet, to the mid range or jet to the hoop. And it's a little bit harder for J-Dub specifically to kind of snake those screens. It's a skill that I think is probably one of the most underrated skills in the league. I think that the Thunder have two guys that are good at it, in Cason Wallace and Lou Dort. And honestly, like, I think J-Dub did a pretty good job on Luka, to where if the solution for the Mavericks is, hey, Kyrie Irving's going to take 25 shots on Thursday, I think you put Dort on him. If you think that that's the way that they're going, and then you feel good about just because Luka's just not moving well enough, and he's not trying to get in the paint like he does. I think you can settle for putting J-Dub on him and switching that up. Now it's going to come, like, foul trouble is going to be another issue. I think this game was officiated. There were a lot of ticky-tack fouls, I'll say, last night. A lot of fouls. I mean, 21 fouls on the Mavs, 18 for the Thunder. It's a lot of fouls. It's not been very common in this playoffs, across the league, for that many fouls to be called. But it was a very physical game. And I think Kyrie is going to have to be their answer, but I do think the Thunder have like a counterpunch to that as well.
Thunder typically not a high-end rebounding team, and they destroyed the Mavs last night on the boards. Anomaly, or is that something that you think may continue through the series?
I actually kind of think it's a little bit of both. The Mavs weren't some great rebounding team in the regular season either. Now, they got a little bit better when they got Gafford, but they're not some great team. The Thunder actually had their best rebounding games this season against the Mavericks. And so I think they obviously have these bigs that are good, but when you look across the rest of the roster, like, PJ Washington's not some great rebounder. Derek Jones is not a good rebounder. Kyrie's not a great rebounder. Luka is a great rebounder whenever he's like physically right, but I think he's even limited there a little bit. And then you go to the bench, like, Lively's really the only guy. Like, Josh Green's too small. Tim Hardaway's not a guy that's going to impact the boards. The Thunder have guys that are just willing to kind of lay it all out. And, everybody in the starting lineup had 4 or more rebounds last night. Dort's going to mix it up. We know that. Josh Giddey is a good rebounder. Shai had 9 last night. I mean, it just shows like the effort these guys are willing to put in. And then obviously you have Chet with 7. And then, Jay Will came off the bench and played great minutes for them, had 9. I don't think they're going to beat them, 39-52 again, probably. But I think it's more even than what people would have thought, just because I think people, when they think about rebounding, they tend to just think about the big man, and they think Chet skinny, Daniel Gafford big, obviously they're going to win the rebounding battle. Well, there's 10 guys on the court, and the Thunder have guys that were just willing to do the little things last night. They had 16 offensive boards. A lot of those were like tap outs, where guys are just getting their hand in there. They're packing the paint anyways. And a lot of times it's really just Lively or Gafford in the middle. And so they're able to get their hands on the basketball. And like that to me was a sign that like this Thunder team is hungry and they're not done. And they have a supreme confidence. Like, talking to them last night before and after the game, this group has supreme confidence. Like, they don't operate like a young team. Mark Daigneault doesn't act like a coach that this is his first run. They speak intelligently, and they speak with like great confidence. And so I don't think like the rebounding or the size or any of that stuff scares these guys. I think that they're willing to kind of sacrifice whatever they need to.
Was there anything in game 1 that alarmed you for the Thunder, where you went, okay, this looks like an issue. This looks like an issue moving forward in the series, or was there nothing like that for you?
Yeah, I just think Giddey was just not effective at all. last night as an offensive player. I think the way that they were playing him specifically to start the third quarter, where it really just gummed up the Thunder's offense when they put a big on Giddey, or they just like flat out ignored him. And Giddey didn't have a real quick trigger on his threes, which is kind of a sign of like, okay, we kind of know where this might be going. And then just on the drive, like he drove to the hoop on Derek Jones, thought he could kind of muscle him a little bit, and Derek Jones met him at the hoop and just stuffed him.
I've
So
got to say real quick,
yeah,
the three he had that was like just barely skipped the backboard.
yeah.
I made such an awful sound from the living room. My wife from across the house is like, "What happened?"
Yeah, it was rough. It was not Giddey's not, and like the truth is, like this may not be Giddey's series, and I think that's okay. You know, we've seen in the past, like the Thunder have had players that have been situational at times, and I think Giddey can be one of those guys. And the good news for the Thunder is, like, if Giddey can only play 15 minutes, well, you have other guys that can pick up the slack. You have Isaiah Joe that can come in and play. You have Aaron Wiggins. You have Case and Wallace. You have guys that are actually probably better suited for this matchup, because one of the good things, the Thunder don't give up switches, especially when it comes to Lou Dort. But if they ever did want to deploy a switchy lineup, like you really can't have Giddey out there against these two. And so the only that's really the only thing that was kind of alarming. And I think Giddey will bounce back. They're not going to like, pluck him from the starting lineup. Like he's going to continue to start. He's going to continue to play and get his chance. And you may have a good game or two from Giddey, but I think this is a series that is way better suited for the likes of Aaron Wiggins, Casey Wallace, and Isaiah Joe.
Yeah. Do you see anything that happened in game one? I know you pointed out the Clippers, how they look bad and then bounce back, and it's kind of been their MO to a certain degree. Anything that I don't know what your pick was, but anything worthy of looking at your pick after game one and saying, I need to reevaluate?
Yeah, I had Thunder in 6. If I were
Look
to
at us. 3 guys that picked the Thunder to win in 6.
Wow, look at us. I feel a little cowardly, honestly, about it. It's kind of like rating, like if someone were like, hey, rate this this plate of nachos, and you're like, oh, I think it's like a 7. It's the coward's number.
We talked about that. I was, I really wanted to say 5, but
yeah,
I felt like maybe I'm a little overconfident.
yeah, it's maybe it's like a little bit of like reverence for Kyrie and Luka, but I mean, honestly, like if I don't know, I'm trying to think of like what the comp would be if like Shai was hobbled, and if I don't know who would have to be out. That's the equivalent of Maxi Kleber. If like Dort was out or something like that, who I think they probably hold like similar importance with the way that they play. I think everybody be like, and the Mavs were completely healthy. I think people would have been like, oh yeah, Mavs in 5 easily. Like Shai's not moving right. They don't have one of their most important players. One of their like 5 or 6 most important players. Like, yeah, this is gonna be easy. And for some reason, like there's just like this hesitance, and for me, and I just haven't seen him do it. I haven't seen him in this spot. I haven't seen them with like pressure on, and like these are young guys. A lot of these guys are still in their rookie scale deals, and I just wonder what it's like to look across and see Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic in round 2 of the playoffs, and like they were watching these guys in high school and college, like go to war in the playoffs, and now they're in the war. I just think like that would be a harder hurdle than what it's been. But if I were to readjust, I would say Thunder in 5, honestly. Like I think it's going to be really tough for Dallas to hang with OKC. I think the Thunder defense has been probably underrated nationally. That they have been outstanding all year, and they have taken it up a notch in the playoffs. And I think that I wanted to see how they fared against a team that has like really good shot creators, and they did great. They played really good basketball, and I think that they can even be a little bit better. I think that obviously they shot the ball like insanely in the fourth quarter, but I think that they left a little bit on the table in the first 3 quarters. So I don't know that I am necessarily adjusting to Thunder in 5, but I think, rewatching some of it this morning and kind of taking a look at everything, I struggle to find what's the adjustment? Is it just don't foul? That's something that they could do, is like defend without fouling. But then are you lessening your physicality? Like, how are you doing that? They don't, PJ Washington's not a great defender. Derek Jones is a really good defender, but he's not a top tier defender. He's not going to make some all defensive team. They just don't have the guys to defend the Thunder. And the Pelicans did, frankly. They have great defenders. But I just struggle to find what the solution is for the Mavericks outside of stop fouling and make more shots. And to me, that kind of variance that you're looking at, those are two things that are a little bit outside your control. You can't control where their shot's going to go in or not, and you can't control what the officials are going to do. And when those are the things that are going to be the difference, I just think advantage Thunder.
Andrew, does it feel like whoever wins this series is just walking into an absolute buzzsaw?
It does look like that. But man, I think it's just two buzzsaws running into each other. I don't know what happened. I've never seen two buzzsaws run into each other, but I think that is
two
more
young buzzsaws.
Yeah, these are two. I mean, if it's gonna be Minnesota OKC, and I hate to look ahead that far because we're only 2 or 3 total games in these series, but if that's what happens, Anthony Edwards hasn't seen anybody like Lou Dort. I think Lou Dort is one of the most important players in the playoffs, period. There's not another perimeter player like him outside of the guys in Boston. He's one of the top 3 most important defenders in the playoffs right now, probably. And Anthony Edwards he has been the best player in the playoffs. I don't want to diminish what he's done, but he hasn't had to play against a guy who's as physical, will fight through screens, will die for every loose ball. He hasn't played against that guy yet. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is too thin and not strong enough to handle him, and he's not physical enough to handle him. I also just think the Thunder bring something to the table that a lot of teams can't, and they can play the same way the entire game. And whether it's Shai out there, if it's J-Dub out there, if Giddey's out there, all those guys can put pressure on the rim and spray out to the perimeter. And the Nuggets obviously have one of the greatest players ever and the MVP of the regular season. But Jamal Murray's not been good in the playoffs. He's hit a couple really great shots down the stretch, but he's not been very good overall in the playoffs. And then you have guys that they need somebody else to create for them. Michael Porter Jr. is a nice, really, really nice player, but he's somebody that is reliant on others creating for him. Aaron Gordon, the same thing. And honestly, the Timberwolves are hey, Aaron Gordon, do your thing. Whatever you want to do, we'll let you have it. The Timberwolves haven't played a team like the Thunder yet either. And so I think that is going to be if that happens, it'll be fascinating to see who wins. And it's wild to think that if that happens, it's either the Thunder or the Wolves going to the NBA Finals, which just seems crazy to me. But we're still far away from that. But yeah, if I'm the Thunder, I wouldn't be scared. I wouldn't be scared of anybody.
Yeah, I know we jumped ahead a little bit, but I wanted to ask you about what you thought of Chet and his game 1. What do you expect to see from him moving forward in the series?
I thought he was phenomenal in game 1. He had the 3 blocks, he had the 2 steals, but to me it was I honestly don't think anybody really matched his physicality last night. Now everybody looks at him, and when you see him up close, I can't blame anybody. He is this tall, lanky, skinny, white kid who's just that's the guy, that's the guy that's going to do this to us. And he does.
The attitude doesn't match the frame.
No, that's exactly right. He wants all the smoke. He wants every single bit of what the Mavs are trying to give to him. And he is initiating contact. He is in there fighting for rebounds. He's blocking shots. He fears nobody. He'll get out there on the perimeter and guard Kyrie if he needs to. He'll go guard Luka if he needs to. He's hitting threes. He's catching lobs. He's, transition putbacks. I mean, he's just everywhere. He's probably somebody that people aren't talking about a ton today because like Shai had the 29, 9, and 9. I think you talk about Aaron Wiggins off the bench, who was really good, and even Jalen Williams, who scored 10 in the fourth quarter and had that 8 straight, just had the arena on fire. But Chet just had this like steady presence throughout the entire game, where when he was on the court, he was making a tremendous impact on both ends. And like, what's crazy is like this might be the worst version of Chet that we see. Like this is his first season. This is his second playoff series. He's gonna get a lot better. He's gonna get stronger. And I think his shooting is going to become more impactful as they learn to use it a little bit more. He only took 5 threes last night. I think that number needs to be 10. I think the Thunder offense when it's fully unlocked, he's taking 10 threes a game, and teams are having to completely adjust. Because I think if he takes 10 in a game, and let's say he makes 4 or 5 of them, the Mavs are having to look down the bench at Markieff Morris and say, "Can you help us?" Because they cannot play. You won't be able to play Daniel Gafford. You won't be able to play Derek Lively if he's taking that many threes and making them. So I think like that's like another thing the Thunder could do in this series is like just find ways to generate, double-digit threes for Chet.
When I think it was the second lob he caught from Giddey, you were the first person I looked at just to see if you were smiling or not, because I know it made your heart happy. Now, to your credit, you're a true professional. You were stone faced. I was like, okay, Schlecht he is a true Big J journalist over there. But I knew it made you so happy. This is the last one I got for you, Andrew, just because I don't really know if there's much value in us going down the Gordon Hayward route and what's going on there, but you and Dagnall you've had some pretty fun interactions in the post-game pressers throughout the year. I'm just curious, and I know you've got more post-game pressers coming, but what has been your favorite interaction with the NBA Coach of the Year this season?
Oh man, I think it has to be him just absolutely just ribbing me for my injured finger, and you can see it here.
Oh, the mallet finger.
I've got mallet finger, and so I'm holding the mic like this. This is game 2, I think. Game 1 or game 2 of the first round. I'm holding the mic, and my finger just it looks ridiculous. But I've got, and for those listening on the podcast, I've got the splint on my middle finger on my right hand, and so I'm holding the mic. I'm trying to ask him about cross matching. Like, okay, coach, thoughts on like cross matching and how they may handle Josh Giddey, and he is clearly not listening to a word I'm saying. And he looks at me and he interrupts my question and he goes, "What happened to your finger?" I'm like, "Coach, listen, like it's not a good story. I really don't want to talk about it." And he's like, "Well, what's the injury and how'd you do it?" I'm like, "Oh boy." And so I told him it's mallet finger. It's this ligament in my middle finger that, is torn. And so I have to have it in this splint for like 6 weeks. And I heard it gardening, and he just lights up, and then he lights me up, and he's like, "Oh, gardening, a contact sport." And it's just so funny. And I call my wife afterwards and tell her about it. She's like, "Why did you say gardening?" She's like, "You weren't really like you were like working in the yard, like doing stuff. Why did you say gardening? It sounds like you're like planting like flowers or like dropping seeds in, and like you just like tripped and like hurt your finger or something." It was just, I was like, "That's a fair point. Shouldn't have said gardening." But yeah,
When in doubt, you got to dress it up.
I know.
You
Oh, I know. Antonio Daniels, he does color commentary for the Pelicans, came up to me. He's like, "Man, you got to get a better story than that." He's like, he's like, you gotta talk about like some fight you got in. I was like, "Well," it's like, it's definitely not a good story, but I mean, it shows like the personality that he's got. A lot of times he does the Thunder thing where he gives the cliche answers. There's definitely questions that you can ask him where he's like a Woody doll where you pull the string and like, you know exactly what answer you're going to get. But he has these moments where he can be really funny. And I think people would, like, if you have any chance, like if you ever see him at, out and about, like just stop and talk to him, because like, one, he's like a really humble guy. He's really approachable, and he's really funny. Like there are some stories that I wish I could tell, on the show with my interactions with him, because he is just like he's such a delight. And he's really funny, and he's just kind of this normal guy who happens to be a millionaire basketball coach. But yeah, Coach Daigneault he's the man. He's great.
I just have one last thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not trying to make you sad,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Oh,
I splinted it for a long, long time. Now full function. Don't
Yeah.
worry, full function.
Okay. But it just
Now
doesn't right.
little different.
Yeah.
Wasn't the tip ligament, which was what you're dealing with.
Oh yeah.
So mine was here, but
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, don't don't expect it to really straighten out. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
not trying to make you sad, but
no. At least I can always just think of Mark Daigneault ribbing me for the rest of my life.
at least you have a great story.
I have a good story to go with it. So
Andrew, you're the man. I know it was a late night. It's been an early morning. You're the best. Everyone, go listen to Down to Dunk. It is my favorite Thunder podcast. They do a great job over there. Appreciate the time, man.
thanks, guys. Appreciate it.